Little technical issue, I guess. I got to make sure my Wi-Fi is all hooked up. Hey, hi everyone. It's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo. Emil, Amok to you. Hope you had a great weekend. This is our Monday program where we come to you live. We're here Monday through Friday. Most of the time live. Sometimes we never phone it in. We just sort of like do it live. You can find us on YouTube at Emil Amok 1. Maybe that's where you're watching us, or on Twitter at Emil Amok. And so I also things in the news. Just the Pope has decided that priests who want to bless same-sex marriages, you can. You can't marry them, but you can bless them, which I think is. I mean, most of them are going to be ex-priests, so I think you got to do that. That may come as a shock to some people, but we're heading in that way, if not a total embrace of same-sex marriage. We're heading that way. But the two things that I've read so far in the newspapers last couple days that have really caught my attention have been the story in the New York Times on Neo Lu. Did you see that? There's this guy, he's in his 20s, in China. He goes to get a job, or he ascertains a job as a translator. He goes, and suddenly he is found to have been sold into a kind of labor camp as kind of a phone worker who tries to scam money online from people around the world, mostly women. But if you've seen some of these things on the internet, on social media, they're scams trying to get money from defenseless people. This guy was also an accountant. So he managed to sort of sidestep that and worked as an accountant. Was miserable because he was part of this criminal gang, really, right? Trafficking in people and then scamming money online. Neo Lu figured out a way as the accountant to communicate with people outside. One of the people was a reporter for the New York Times. They documented the story, and it's an excellent story. It reads, as you get to the end, just like a fascinating memoir, just like a fascinating movie, which is all planned for the story of Neo Lu. So check it out, New York Times, and it's a fascinating read. I'll get to some of it today, but it's about seven months inside a labor camp, and it begins with the sentence, Neo Lu had been looking forward to starting his lucrative new job as a translator, but from the moment he arrived, he knew something was off. He hadn't been hired, he'd been kidnapped and forced to work for an abusive online scam operation. Only by understanding how it worked could he hope to escape. The story is 7 months inside an online scam labor camp. A man abducted by a Chinese gang, forced to work in a scam operation. He gathered financial information, photos, videos, shared the material with the New York Times. Isabel Kian is the writer of the story, fortunate enough to have this. Well, I'm sure it wasn't just dumped on her lap, but pretty much it was one of those investigations that you get the right source and you go to town. It's a fabulous story. He'd been promised a generous salary, a better work-life balance, a chance to live in the vibrant metropolis of Bangkok. His fluency in English would be put to good use as a translator for an e-commerce company, the recruiter had said. More than anything else, Neo Lu, a 28-year-old Chinese office worker, believed the gig would be the new start he needed to save money for his dream of emigrating to the West. He wanted to come America, Europe. He had been to London to go to school. So in June of last year, he said his goodbyes, flew to Thailand, and headed for his new job. And when he arrived, his head was spinning from the scorching sun and the feeling that something had gone wrong. Instead of an office building in a city, he had been dumped at what looked like a labor camp had haphazardly built on a patch of jungle and muddy fields. And that's where the story begins. A fascinating tale and well documented because Lou, while he was in the scam operation, kept records. He was the accountant, took photos and videos, shared them with the Times. It's an inside look in, and most of the illegal activity happens online, right? To steal tens of thousands of dollars from innocent people. And you don't need, if that's the net from one victim, you don't need very many to suddenly find yourself amassing millions of dollars. That's why they do this. So interesting that they don't go into every detail, but it wasn't the police who helped them. But when you're dealing in the underworld, it's underworld people dealing with people who are a little closer to the authorities, but still shady. And then they got him out. And now they're talking about a movie and a memoir for this guy, Neo Liu, who the things he endured, the torture, once he exposed the fact that he had talked to people outside and he was ready to expose the entire operation to the media. What happened was his captors got mad and said, look, we're going to demand a ransom. And that's when the less shady person came in and intervened, got him out. It's not clear from my reading of the story. He's out and he's got a story to tell. So you think, if you're an Asian American, you think about your journey to America, your journey to the West, your journey to your opportunity, and look at how it's changed. Look at how it's changed 2023. Guy from China ends up in Bangkok at a labor camp, an online scam labor camp, spent 7 months there. Well, congrats to the Times for getting that story. Neo Liu, the Neo Liu story. You think you had an incredible immigration tale. Well, he's back in China. I'm not sure where he is. But like I said, you think you have an incredible immigration tale. The story's not over for Neo Liu. We just know he's not at that scam labor camp. Check it out in the New York Times. Excellent story. One of the best reads I encountered this weekend. The other thing was a story in the Wall Street Journal on Jeffrey Epstein. And you think you know everything about Jeffrey Epstein. And, well, this is just part of the ongoing Wall Street Journal investigation. And they give it good play. A little picture on page 1, and then they jump it to the B section and give it as much play as it needs. The headline is Jeffrey Epstein never stopped abusing women, and his VIP circle helped make it possible. Let me see if you can guess who's in the lead. A WSJ investigation shows Epstein continued ensnaring young women for abuse after his 2008 conviction. This is their story of what happened. It's by Khadija Safdar. Excellent tale, longish tale. Here's just the first 4 graphs, okay? Because you'll get the sense of where this is going. In March 2014, Jeffrey Epstein took his private jet to Seattle to visit Bill Gates at his office. Epstein brought along a Polish model he had met a few months earlier. Dressed in a long gray coat, she posed for a photo with the Microsoft co-founder. I think that's one of the things that that Gates' ex-wife probably figured out. Epstein took the picture. Looking at the photograph now brings back difficult memories for the Polish model, who was then in her 20s. She notes how young she looks at the time and how strange she must have appeared to Gates and other famous people that Epstein was escorting her to meet. Now, when I look at myself there, it could have looked more normal, she said, or it couldn't have looked more normal, she said in a recent interview. I saw the looks of those people like, what is she doing here? In the years after he registered as a sex offender, Epstein was rarely alone. He was often accompanied by attractive young women in their late teens or 20s. They opened the door at his New York townhome. When billionaires came calling, they sat beside him at meetings with bankers and celebrities. They traveled with him on his private jet to visit scientists, political leaders, and tech company founders. Photos of some of them with Epstein appeared in tabloid newspapers. Earlier this year, the Wall Street Journal revealed that numerous prominent people had met with Epstein after he pleaded guilty in Florida in 2008 to soliciting and procuring a minor for prostitution. Many of those people said they believed the convicted sex offender had reformed. Most, including Gates, said they now regret their association with Epstein and that they didn't know Epstein was using those ties in his dealings with the women. A Gates spokeswoman said the software billionaire neither knew nor interacted with the woman that Epstein brought to Seattle. The trove of documents reviewed by the Journal, which included Epstein's daily calendars and his typo-laden private emails, also contained hundreds of entries with young women, including the Polish model. Many of those women were Russian, European models that Epstein had lured into his orbit and sexually exploited while he was hobnobbing with the powerful and wealthy people. Interviews with several of those women, others familiar with his operations, and the trove of documents reveal for the first time how Epstein, who died in jail in 2019 awaiting trial on federal sex trafficking charges, used his powerful connections to groom a new generation of women to exploit. The Journal's investigation shows that Epstein's sexual exploitation and sex abuse didn't end with his 2008 conviction, as many of his famous associates later said they believed, but continued until his second arrest in 2019. He lured dozens of women by promising to use his connections to powerful people to get them jobs or other opportunities. He then groomed most of the women for his personal sexual exploitation and passed a select group to other men for sex. Epstein told some of the women he could get them into Woody Allen films, the yearly Woody Allen film, or secure them a job at the United Nations. He promised others he could help them get modeling gigs at Victoria's Secret. He told the Polish model he could help her get involved at the Gates Foundation. He conjured up many such offers for women. And there he had pictures of the women with Gates and with Woody Allen and with Ehud Barak at Epstein's townhouse. This is all photographs in the article. Without having legitimate connections to so many high-powered people, Jeffrey Epstein would not have been able to traffic most of these women after 2008, said lawyer Brad Edwards. Along with his law firm partner, Brittany Henderson, he represents the Polish model and more than 150 of Epstein's accusers. These are smart women who would not have believed him otherwise. So, what do we get? We get Epstein uses his Rolodex, his buddies, his high-placed buddies to get him women. It's kind of the MO he's always used. According to the story, under federal law, sex trafficking of adults involves the use of force, fraud, or coercion to compel sex acts in exchange for money or favors. The law doesn't require movement across a border, and the coercion can be psychological. When the victims are minors, the law doesn't require proof of fraud or coercion. Edward's clients have sued Epstein's estate and financial institutions that provided banking services to him. Edward said that most of the women were sexually abused and exploited by Epstein himself, but he also groomed some for certain of his friends. He said a total of more than 20 men had been named as participants in sexual exploitation or abuse by women who were trafficked by Epstein. He declined to name the men, citing client confidentiality. Epstein often instructed women to report back their encounters with other men. Edward said he would make the women describe the details of the abuse, and if they were upset, it would get him excited. Henderson recently interviewed more than 130 Epstein accusers who came forward in class actions against the banks. She said about 45 of roughly 55 women who told her they had been sexually exploited by Epstein after 2008 were models from Eastern Europe or Russia, and they were all at least 18 at the time. Well, so there you have it. I mean, the story goes on, but it's very detailed. You got the lawyer as a source, and the lawyer is giving up is the models who were engaged in this. They are suing the estate, and it just has a kind of credible ring. They're not naming the names, but there's at least 20 rich men who are, if you were in Jeffrey Epstein's inner circle and you're one of the 20, I don't know, the ones that they named here were Gates, Woody Allen. They were right up there at the top. Maybe Gates was used as a kind of clickbait, for the lead, but it doesn't look good if you were one of the 20 who are Jeffrey Epstein's closest friends who could do something for these female friends, escorts of Jeffrey Epstein. Anyway, that was interesting. That was in the Wall Street Journal. So there, the two stories there. And I got to mention a third story that was on 60 Minutes last night. And I mention this because I've written about going to the, the Asian art wing of the Met. And this story in 60 Minutes last night that Anderson Cooper did about the stolen treasures of Cambodia and how most of them were stolen by a ring of art thieves that started grassroots level in Cambodia and organized by one collector, a British collector, who actually engaged in his he was an art collector, a rich art collector who also dabbled in Thai male bodybuilding. I mean, he was a white guy from England, but he sponsored Thai male bodybuilding contests. So there goes, a lot of stereotypes there about bodybuilding, Thailand, and European, especially British art lovers who are dabbling there. The man died before he could be brought to justice, but they found the people who actually looted the different temples in Thailand, got them on tape, got them saying, yeah, that's why we cut them off at the feet, these Buddhas and these gods, because, we couldn't carry them out. And so if you've been to a museum and you've seen statues where the feet are missing, it's because they've been hacked off, sawed off there at the feet so they could be stolen. Many of them, at least a few dozen, have been reunited. And it was just a fascinating a report about how this investigation worked and how Thailand, or Cambodia rather, was in on this. Cambodia, if you'll recall, during the Khmer Rouge, during the genocide of Cambodia, many of the temples were looted then, found their way into this illegal art network. Some of them ended up in millionaires' homes in Florida. I just couldn't help but think about my friend, Death Prawn, the New York Times photographer, who I knew for years as a member of the Asian American Journalists Association. I remember he kept telling me not to forget Cambodia, that the story wasn't over, that he escaped the killing fields, but the ongoing story about what was going on there and what was going on here in terms of the Cambodian refugees here. And then, of course, bringing those who perpetrated the genocide, bringing them to justice. He was always telling me to keep an eye on the bigger, broader Cambodian story. And never did I figure that it would take this sort of artsy turn where they're calling this heist of Cambodian artifacts, Cambodian statues, probably the largest art heist operation in history. I mean, they're going to all these famous places like the Met, big dealerships, art dealers, and the Met is now saying, hey, we're going to return some of this. But when you think about it, who else would be interested in all these antiquities, right? But the nonprofit art museums that act as a ready fence for, or as a recipient from fence people who would fence these articles and facilitate the transfer from an art dealer, an unscrupulous art dealer, to a place like the Met. It's really kind of fascinating when you see how these big major institutions and how some big dealers who have lots of money, and they become targets too, because where else are you going to get the big money for these pieces? If you've gotten stolen goods, where are you going to get money, or who's going to pay for these things? But people with a lot of money, collectors, private collectors, or nonprofit collectors with a lot of money, like the Met. So it's a fascinating story. And if this is happening to Cambodia, you got to wonder about all the other pieces of art that they have and how they have it and how it got there. I bet you there's a lot more malfeasance and corruption in all of that we don't even know about. But it's fascinating because, like I said, Cambodia, I know almost everything I know about Cambodia through the killing fields, and from talking to my friend Death Prawn. I thought about him several times, and I had to feel bad about this as the lingering impact of the genocide the Cambodian people felt that they went through. And now they're being made whole. The gods and goddesses, the statues of Vishnu, the statues that were stolen, are going back to Cambodia. So a happy story. So, all right, there were three stories right there. The Cambodia one, Jeffrey Epstein, and Neo Liu in the New York Times. And, with a very real Asian American angle. When you talk about, hey, how do people come here now? I mean, in the last couple of weeks, we learned that a lot of people are coming up through Mexico. It's not just people from Venezuela. It's not just people coming from, Central America and Mexico. It's people from Asia. And the Neo Luz story just talks about the criminal underworld and how they're getting in the act. And you see how people who are looking for opportunity, how there are things in the way before. I mean, they want to come to the West. They can't get to the West because they're stopped by things like these illegal online scam trafficking operations. Check it out, the Neo Lou story in the New York Times. Neo Lou, he's the 29-year-old who was in a labor camp. And then the Jeffrey Epstein story in the Wall Street Journal. It's just interesting because I guess I was shocked, or I shouldn't be, that Bill Gates' name was implicated in the very first paragraph. It didn't say he's one of the 20 who enabled Epstein well after his first arrest. Said there were 20. Gates has mentioned it might just be for clickbait purposes, but it just makes it sound like Jeffrey Epstein, even after he was first captured in 2008, still maintained his ability to do all his nastiness enabled by his rich friends. All those folks who went to Epstein Island, all those folks who went to all his parties, they were the enablers. All right, but the story I want to talk about today, I want to talk about Shohei Ohtani. I've been thinking about this Shohei Ohtani story because, the press conference was on Thursday. That's where he signed. They showed off, Shohei Ohtani in the Dodger uniform, number 17. It made all the big news. He's been courted the last few months, ever since the baseball season ended. He's been courted at least, all the big major teams with money. The Yankees, the Mets, the Dodgers, the Blue Jays, the San Francisco Giants, the Texas Rangers. They were all interested in getting his services. And the Dodgers won. And I'm sad for that because I'm not a Dodger fan. But here's one thing that I'm happy about when it comes to Shohei Ohtani. I'm happy about Shohei Ohtani because of what he represents. Because he really does, to me, and I mean this, he represents a kind of Asian American or Asian awareness. Because let's be clear, he's not Asian American, he's Asian, but he's an Asian face. And I call this an expansion of our awareness of what Asian America or Asian in America is. And we want to keep the distinctions because if you're an Asian in America, you are not an American national. When you're an Asian American, you are a citizen, a resident. I mean, those kind of status questions are important. But when you talk about Shohei Ohtani, you're talking about a new realm of political identity. You're talking about a new realm in the identity politics game. You're talking about, I call it the new AC, Asian consciousness in America, where we know about each other and about ourselves. We know about being Asian, and that's just amongst us Asian Americans, but everyone else knows it as well because there's Ohtani, the face of America's pastime, baseball, the best baseball player in the world. It's why I say Shohei Ohtani, it's Japanese for the new era in American race history, or at least that's what I'm calling it. You see, and now if you doubt that, Ohtani's ascendance is really not unlike what happened when Jackie Robinson broke a color barrier in baseball. I mean, Ohtani broke a race barrier too, because he combined it with the smashing of an historic money barrier that everyone in a capitalist America can understand. No MLB player has signed a 10-year, $700 million contract in baseball history ever. And no Asian or Asian American was ever this coveted by any team willing to pay such a high price. It seemed that everyone wanted Shohei. And, he accommodated, it was later revealed, he accommodated his suitors, allowing them to defer more than 90% of his salary to later years so that whatever team signed him could use the money to build a team of stars around him. So when Ohtani finally agreed to terms with the LA Dodgers last week, it made it easy to predict an emerging new age for Asian America, and certainly for everyone of Asian descent when it comes to America's racial and cultural history. You think that's hyperbole? I think not. 50 years ago, think about it, it would have been unimaginable that the face of Major League Baseball, still America's pastime, would be Asian or even Asian American. And this is where we are at the end of 2023. The distinction of citizenship still is important. Ohtani is a Japanese national and not an American. But he's in America and he's Asian and he's the best. Of course, Asian Americans claim him as ours. Now, I know there's that perpetual foreigner thing that we must watch out for. And you got to say, come on, Emil, you're playing into that. Well, perhaps a little bit. But maybe because Ohtani is so big, 6'4", and so special, we're moving into a different arena of identity politics. One where the blur between Asian and Asian America is more acceptable. That's the new era that Ohtani represents. It's a shift to where we're all about our shared Asian consciousness, or what I call AC, which is appropriate for what is known as the summer game. AC, you say? Well, it's at something beyond the label Asian American or AAPI or AANHPI. Those are oft-used, broad, superficial labels, umbrellas we all fit under. When I say AC, our Asian consciousness, I'm talking about that thing inside all of us who are Asian or of Asian descent. It's more encompassing than identifying by individual ethnicity. It's an Asian awareness of our commonalities, especially here in America. It's our Asian consciousness. And we saw it at the height of the Stop AAPI hate, time when racists bought into Trump's pushing of the China virus hate. What happened? We were all attacked as Asians, Filipinos, Thai, Japanese, you name it. We shared the brunt of America's violent animus. But AC goes beyond saying we all look alike. As Asians, it's all those other things that connect us, the feelings, the pokey sticks as well as the poke bowls, the noodles. It's more cultural than political. We may not have an Asian face on the Supreme Court or in the White House, but the highest paid baseball player ever coming to a North American ballpark near you, that might be better for us than we all think. Keep in mind the specialness of all this. I mean, they're calling Ohtani the second coming of Babe Ruth. I mean, when Ruth played in the 1920s, Asians in America were excluded and demonized. In the 1940s, Japanese Americans were incarcerated in camps. Did anyone ever think an Asian could be the symbol of America? Babe Ruth. But now it's the 2020s. And like the Babe, Ohtani hits homers, only better. Ohtani also pitches like the Babe once did, only better than the Babe, more skillfully than the former Yankee star. And that all makes Ohtani arguably the greatest baseball talent ever to play Abner Doubleday's game. When the Dodgers introduced him at the news conference last week, he had that Dodger jersey on and the big smile. One LA sports columnist dubbed it Ohtani's coronation. Well, Ohtani is the king of baseball. He's an Asian icon. Icon? In this case, that's like being the best kind of stereotype. It's not the model minority as if we're expected to all be like Ohtani. We may not have his talent, but we get his feels. I mean, whenever a sports fan or a baseball fan in particular looks at an Asian or Asian American, it will be hard not to think of Ohtani, especially if Ohtani's just homered to win a game in the bottom of the ninth to win you a sports bet, or he's on your favorite team, or visiting your town and signing your son or your kid's baseball, or posing with his dog Decoy. And then the stardust trickles down to all the rest of us. It's the feel-good from America's pastime, powered by the great Ohtani hope. So check it out, my essay on Shohei Ohtani. It's on the ALDEF blog, aaldef.org/blog. There's more there. But really, I mean, that's how I feel about Shohei Ohtani. He's a special, special dude. And I think, you know, like I've talked about this as AC, this Asian consciousness. But it's true. Look, if you're Asian American, there's a difference, right? I mean, the Asians, they don't have American passports. Got an American passport? U.S. passport? You're a different kind of Asian American. You got a brown one, you know, from the Philippines. I think the Chinese have a brown one. I mean, you know, if you don't have an American passport, you're an Asian American. I mean, you're an Asian national. But if you have an American passport, that's an Asian American. And like I said, we always like to say there's a division. We're separate, right? But I don't know, when it comes to cultural things like baseball, I think we have to embrace this. Get on Ohtani's back and say, let's go. You know, this has never happened ever, where an Asian face is like the hero of Major League Baseball. I mean, there have been Asian players before, you know, pitchers, certainly Ichiro Suzuki. He wasn't the bad. I mean, he was good. He wasn't Babe Ruth. I mean, a generational talent for sure, an enduring star. But Ichiro, great, but no Ohtani. And there have been Asian American stars. We know Tim Lincecum, half Filipino. There's some stars right now. We got Colton Wong, a lot of guys out of Hawaii. We got the kid from Los Gatos, California, Northern California, Steve Kwan, playing for the Cleveland Guardians. There are a lot of Asian American players. The kid out of Volpe, out of the Yankees, half Filipino. There are Asian American players who are playing at a high level. They're not Ohtani. They're not 700 million over 10 years. That's a difference. It speaks in the language of capitalism. It speaks to us in the language of the visual language of, there's a guy who looks like us. It's special. It's real. I call it the emergence of an Asian consciousness in America. I call it the age of Ohtani. What else? Anyway, I was thinking about that all week as we were watching sports. And were you watching basketball? Boy, Stephen Curry didn't get a 3-pointer, sort of stopped his streak of 3-point shots made at about like 268 games, which is incredible. But the Warriors, actually look good, and now they're playing their younger players. I mean, how about were you watching football? I mean, not the most inspiring week for football, unless you were a 49er fan. They completely rolled over and dominated their opponent, who wasn't that good. The Arizona Cardinals. But interesting to note, Kyler Murray, half Korean. I mean, there hasn't really been an Ohtani-like player in football. There are Asian Americans and Asians in playing football. More Asian Americans. I don't know if there are any Asian Americans. Like Tua Tagovailoa, Samoan, AAPI. Hines Ward, when he played for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Super Bowl champ, half Korean. I mean, there are Asian Americans in football. None have the same kind of impact on the sport as Shohei Ohtani has in baseball. Even hockey has Asian Americans. Nick Robertson plays for the Toronto Maple Leafs. His brother is the big star who plays with the Dallas Stars. Multi-million-dollar contract. So, half Filipino. So, that's why I'm high on Shohei. I know some people say, I don't know if I totally buy your argument, Emil. Well, yeah, but maybe it's because you're not a baseball fan, or maybe it's because, I mean, this is the thing. Even casual baseball fans have to admit, oh my God, the best player in baseball, the guy who is, selling the game, is Asian. And I admit that it's an optimistic view because we still live in America. We still live in a place where not too long ago we had the Stop AAPI Hate thing, right? Not too long ago, we still see vicious racist attacks on Asians. But you just have to sense that maybe if people see an Asian like Ohtani, who's the biggest and baddest, and we're not even talking about a Yao Ming type. Yao Ming was good, but he was not, in basketball. Yao Ming was not Shohei Ohtani. He was good. But Shohei Ohtani is like 6'4". He played basketball if he was 7'4". There are a lot of good Chinese basketball players, a lot of good Filipino ones. Jordan Clarkson, Utah Jazz. But Shohei Ohtani in baseball, he's otherworldly. Like I said, he's the second coming of Babe Ruth. Who's the greatest football player ever to play? Would it be a quarterback? That's a tough. When you talk about MVPs in the league, you mostly talk about the quarterback. Has there been an Asian American quarterback? Well, there actually has been. Roman Gabriel, and he played with the Los Angeles Rams. Hasn't been another Roman Gabriel in 60 years. That's an incredible thing. But there are Asian American players, linemen, big Samoan linemen, some defensive backs, Troy Polamalu, Junior Seau. There have been heavy hitters, but I'm telling you, no one like Shohei, the second coming of Babe Ruth. That's a whole nother level. So I'm optimistic. And if all goes well, we just climb on his back and say, yeah, Shohei, go, baby, go. I mean, we're rooting for him. And this is a significant thing. I am a Giants fan. I wrote about Giants fan, San Francisco Giants, who put in the same kind of offer as the Dodgers to get Shohei's services. And some reason Shohei didn't like San Francisco. I think it's more like, well, who's he going to play with? San Francisco doesn't have all the parts. Shohei didn't want to play with another team that was like the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, where he was playing with the generational talent at the time, Mike Trout. And with Trout and Ohtani, they still couldn't win. You need the pieces to make yourself an entire team. And the Angels tried. They hired, they got some free agents, for the Washington Nationals. They got Rendon. They got some players. Somehow it didn't gel. I don't know what it was. So Shohei's got this strange not strange, but a contract that defers all the money. So look, just pay me $20 million, and out of the $70 million, pay me 20, and with the rest, go out and get players so that I'm not alone. He wants to win. And unfortunately, the Giants made him the same offer, but he didn't like the fact that, hey, look, you don't have enough parts, Giants. I mean, and it's not a matter. I know a lot of people said, oh, he didn't like San Francisco because they got a homeless problem, or he didn't like San Francisco because San Francisco, just always shows up in the news in a negative way because of the urban blight. Are you kidding me? The urban blight in LA is like 100 times worse than San Francisco. Everything is 100 times worse in LA than in San Francisco, or 100 times better. Although, look, the Giants won a World Series in 2010, 2012, 2014. They've got recent pedigree. They're not far away from winning, but they've had some bad luck. They don't get the right players. They haven't had the luck to land a huge free agent. It would have been great if they were able to get Shohei, but they didn't. So I'm just saying that as a Giants fan, for me to come out so strongly saying that Shohei represents this to the Asian American community is, well, it shows that I have no bias. It's real. Shohei is real. Asian consciousness, a sense of Asian consciousness, who we are, and a kind of a solidarity amongst Asians. I know right now it's very popular to say we need to disaggregate the stats and not just call us all Asian Americans, because it's important, what the Cambodians, with the Thai, with the Hmong, with the Chinese, with the Japanese, with the Filipino, what the Indians do. It's all different. And yeah, for some things like, heart disease stats and, medical kind of information, it's important. But, we kind of have this joystick where we zoom in and go in for the real detailed ethnic stuff, zoom out and get the broader picture, the things that bind us as Asians in America. And there are a lot. Noodles, poke sticks, poke bowls. There's a lot that binds us. And we're growing. Fastest growing, right? 26, 27 million if you count the mixed race. Anyway, Asian consciousness, AC, my essay on Shohei Ohtani. A new era, I call it. I'm not saying that just to be kind of bombastic. I mean that. It's potentially, a new era of race terms of Asian Americans? Well, everyone wants to call Asian Americans something else, right? Either AAPI or AANHPI. Include the Native Hawaiians, include the Pacific Islanders. Be more inclusive. Okay, I mean, and those are just government terms. But beyond those terms, there is a sense that, hey, we're Asians. We can relate on these other cultural things. I mean, there's still some divides, some differences. I know my mom, generationally, has a hard time forgiving Japan for World War II. That's one thing. But, like I said, there are all these areas where people, as Asian Americans, we come together and we have our differences. But that's where the beauty of a Shohei unites us. A beauty of Shohei brings us together. It's baseball. It's sports. This is the way it's supposed to be. All right, check out my column on the ALDEF blog, aaldef.org/blog. Also, see me. If you missed any or all of this, check out the YouTube channel, Emil Amok 1, at Emil Amok 1, YouTube at Emil Amok 1, FB, Facebook, fb.com/EmilGuillermo.media. Also on Twitter, or X, formerly known as Twitter, at Emil Amok, EMILAMOK. Trying to meditate. Because there are times when I realize why you have to keep meditating, why you have to keep practicing. Because you're never perfect. You want to snap at some driver who's too slow. You want to get angry at someone who's done something stupid, and you get mad, and you realize, oh no, I got to calm down. And, one of the techniques I like to practice here on this show, we close with it, is the loving kindness practice. So it can be loving and kind, even if you're a Giants fan to a Dodger fan. I think I showed that by saying, hey, Ohtani, we're going to see Ohtani like a ton in San Francisco. Because, the Giants play the Dodgers more because they're division rivals. So I'm not fond of that. But he's Asian. When he's playing anyone else, I'll be rooting for him. And so, a little loving kindness. Love yourself, show love for others. Goes like this. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time. Mahal Kita.